Hello and welcome to the course Introduction to Advanced Cognitive Processes. I am Ark Verma from IIT Kanpur, and we have been talking about language and various aspects related to language comprehension, production. Last few lectures we were talking about various aspects of reading. In the last lecture, if I remember correctly, we were also talking about a disordered aspect of reading, which was referred to as dyslexia, and we kind of saw that what kind of patterns lead to various kinds of reading difficulties, and then there were types of dyslexia we talked about. Today's lecture, I thought I'll talk about the disorder of speech production. The disorder of speech production is commonly referred to as aphasia. However, aphasia is not really a singular disorder. There are various kinds of aphasia, and there are various aspects of the process of speech production that, when damaged, lead to different profiles of aphasia. In today's lecture, we will talk about some of the foundational issues of aphasia and some of the basic aspects of how the models of speech production and perception evolved together to lead to different, to lead to an explanation of different kinds of aphasias that were possible. Again, I am not really going into a lot of detail of these processes, but just to give you a flavor of how speech disorders or language disorders kind of play out, I will talk about different categories of aphasia. Now, I have told this earlier as well, and let me repeat this today as well. One of the very nicest ways to basically look into the workings of the brain is when you can actually look into the disordered brain, when you can look into the damaged brain, because this is where it tells you that which aspects of the brain, which parts of the brain are related to what kind of cognitive processes, and you can deduce more clearly the link between the specific brain areas and particular cognitive functions. Now, this damage or these disorders of the brain can be both acquired or developmental. Acquired damage to the brain basically could occur because of a tumor, a stroke, or say for example an infectious disease, or sometimes a direct injury to the brain. On the other hand, developmental disorders such as autism or specific language impairments are basically coming to the fore when the brain is affected during its developmental phases. For example, prenatally, or due to genetic defects, or due to exposure to certain kind of harmful chemicals. Now, the extent and impact of these brain disorders is very helpful in demonstrating the important aspects related to localization of brain function. In today's lecture, we will talk about aspects which leads to particular profiles of difficulty in production of speech. Let us take an example which kind of made this link possible and is probably one of the most cited example in whole of neuropsychology. In 1860s, neurologist Paul Broca comes across a patient, an adult Frenchman who has a disorder of expressive disorder of speech production, and he could not really produce any intelligible speech. He could not say anything, rather than he could just produce words like tan, 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 and he could not say anything else, or some swear words, etc. After Tan died, a postmortem was conducted, and it was found that he has a very specific lesion in the posterior third of the inferior frontal gyrus. This area was linked with his speech production difficulties and came to be known as Broca's area. The disorder of speech production basically associated with lesion to this area later came to be known as Broca's aphasia. Broca's aphasia is probably the most cited aphasia profile, and it's something that is seen more often than other profiles of aphasia. Typical characteristics of Broca's aphasia included halting, non-fluent speech, and with the speech would have many grammatical errors. It was initially attributed to the loss of motor memories for speech, and nowadays it is linked with difficulties in planning and control of speech acts as well. So, this is one of the examples how damage to the particular aspect of the brain can lead to particular kinds of disorders. This is an example, a diagram borrowed from David Groom's book on Introduction to Cognitive Psychology, and here you can see that the Broca's area is basically just to the front of the brain, and it is very close to the motor cortices, the primary motor cortices, and is inferior to the supplementary motor area. This area is supposed to be involved in planning and execution of speech acts, and hence it is one of the most important areas which are responsible for production of speech. In the following days, another physician Karl Wernicke in 1881 started describing patients who came with disorders of speech comprehension. These patients were basically referred to as having receptive or sensory aphasia. Now, Wernicke found out that these patients who are coming with a sudden onset of speech comprehension difficulties had damage to the left superior temporal gyrus, and this deficit then came to be known as Wernicke's aphasia. This area, the left superior temporal gyrus, came to be known broadly as the Wernicke's area. Here is the diagram again borrowed from David Groom's book just for an illustration. You can see that Wernicke's area is on the superior part of the superior temporal gyrus, and it is on the left hemisphere. So, superior temporal gyrus in that sense is connected to comprehension of language, and it kind of further experiments have and later research has kind of built this link even stronger. Now, on the basis of whatever experiments and the different kinds of profiles that Wernicke and Broca's and other Broca and other people were coming across, Wernicke developed a model of speech perception and production. It was one of the first unified models of production and perception of speech. He proposed initially that because there were two different profiles of the way language could be affected by brain disorders, or this split could basically indicate that there are underlying differences in which the perception and production of brain is perception and production of language is organized in the brain. Here is the diagram, which is the simplest model which was initially proposed by Wernicke in 1881. You can see that on the left hand side there is the speech phonetic movement programs. They are connected to the phonological lexicon, and then the speech phonetic movement programs are connected to the motor systems, and that is the motor cortex, and that leads to speech output, while the phonological lexicon basically is receiving input from auditory analysis, and that is what is basically analyzing that and probably is helping in comprehension of speech. So, this is again one of the very simplest models of perception and production of speech. Obviously, it had to be developed further. So, Lichtheim started testing Wernicke's model, and he identified a very important problem. He said that the model could not really account for patients who were coming with this disorder that then termed transcortical sensory aphasia. So, the problem with these patients was that they had problems in understanding speech, and they had problems in producing speech, but they could repeat whatever was said to them rather accurately. Now, Lichtheim proposed that if we add an additional semantic and conceptual module to the Wernicke's model, this would be able to account for these kind of patients. So, this particular model, which was given by Lichtheim, was referred to as one of the first cognitive models, which basically was based on an information processing framework. So, Lichtheim's model basically it has a motor, it has an output motor module denoted by D. It has an input store of lexical, phonological and lexical information, which is B, and it also has a conceptual center. Here you can see the model that was proposed by Lichtheim. We will probably refer to it later as a Wernicke-Lichtheim model, because this is in essence a further development of the model that was proposed by Wernicke. So, you can see in addition to the speech phonetic movement programs, which is in D, and the phonological lexicon, which is in B, there is another area called the semantic conceptual area, which is denoted by F. Now, you can see that there are connections, there are lines connecting the semantic conceptual area with the speech phonetic movement programs, and the semantic conceptual area with the phonological lexicon. And then you have the motor systems at the left side, and you have the auditory analysis on the right side. Now, this model is specified such as lesions to different aspects of the module, different parts of the module, or lesions which could affect the connections between these different aspects of the model could lead to different profiles of aphasia. It started explaining the kind of patients that were coming in at that point in time. For example, if somebody came with if somebody came with a complaint of Broca's aphasia, you could assume, or you could presume, that the damage was to the section D, which is the speech phonetic module. And then if somebody would come with damage to the Wernicke's aphasia, then you could assume that there is damage to the phonological lexicon. Also, if damage was there between the connection between B and D, which is basically your line C, then people would come up with complaints of they will have damage of speech production and comprehension, but repetition will be all right. So, they will have basically what is known as conduction aphasia. In conduction aphasia, damage to the connection between B and D would lead to a problem in connecting sounds to speech output, and basically the affected individuals would be able to produce speech, but they will not be able to repeat words. This is the model. Now, the development of both of these models actually led to a classification system for aphasia. It is also referred to as one of the classical aphasia systems. This was basically a system that would describe different kinds of aphasia profiles and would also specify the damage to the aspect of the model which would have led to such a profile. So, I will just briefly go over this. So, Broca's aphasia, you will find that the speech is very effortful, it is laborious, the grammar is incorrect, and this is basically caused by lesion to D, which is the speech phonetic movement programs. Wernicke's aphasia basically happens due to damage to aspect of the module B, and which is basically the phonological input lexicon, and here you will see that the patients have impaired speech comprehension. In conduction aphasia, patient will be able to understand speech and produce speech accurately, but will have difficulties with repetition. This will have been caused by damage to line C connecting the modules B and D. Similarly, global aphasic patients can neither understand nor produce speech correctly, and this should have been caused by an extensive damage to both modules B and D of the model. Then is transcortical sensory aphasia. Transcortical sensory aphasic patients cannot understand speech, but they can repeat back whatever is said to them. These patients often show the symptom called echolalia, that is obligatory repetition of heard words. So, if you tell them something, they will repeat it again and again. This would have been caused by the damage between the pathways connecting B and F, which is the phonological input lexicon and the conceptual center, and which is basically denoted by line C in the model. You can see it here. Similarly, there is isolation aphasia or transcortical motor aphasia. Transcortical motor aphasia, basically patients would not be able to understand heard speech and they cannot produce speech, but they can still repeat words. This profile of aphasia will be caused by when there will be a disconnect from the concept center to the audio verbal center and the expressive center. The disconnections of line E between B and F and line G between F and D, you can see it here. So, we are talking about disconnection of line G, which is semantic conceptual and speech phonetic movement program, and line E, which is semantic conceptual and phonological lexicon. A different kind of aphasia would be anomic aphasia. Patients suffering from anomic aphasia would have a problem in naming objects across modalities. Say for example, even if you show them a picture of a cow, they will not be able to name the cow. Even if you make them hear to the sound of cow's voice, they will not be able to name the cow. Now, this would basically be caused by a lesion involving the pathways which connect the concept center to the expressive speech center. So, basically we are talking about the line G, which is basically connecting the semantic conceptual area to the speech phonetic movement programs area. So, this is basically some of the aspects of what the Boston aphasia classification system gives us, and it's a good link. It was obviously it's something that was developed to diagnose these different kinds of aphasic profiles that were coming in. Now, even these models, basically the one proposed by Wernicke and then improved later by Lichtheim, known as the Wernicke-Lichtheim model, it had some problem. In this model, if you notice, the anomic and transcortical motor aphasics or the isolation aphasics are basically being caused by very similar damage in the model. But when you look at the patients and when the clinicians were looking at these patients, they found that these two profiles are clinically very distinct. Patients were showing very different symptoms. So, to actually account for the same, to make the model explain these kind of profiles, Kussmaul in 1877 hypothesized that there should be a feedback connection from the semantic conceptual area back to the phonological input lexicon. And evidence for the fact that these connections are there came from Feinberg and colleagues study, where they showed that people with conduction aphasia were able to tell whether or not pictures of words were pronounced in the same way, even though they were not being able to produce the words correctly. So, they would know how these words are pronounced, but they will not be able to execute them correctly. And the presence of these reciprocal connections between the acoustic phonetic input and the semantic conceptual store and then their subsequent disruption could actually account for such a profile of transcortical motor aphasics. Further, the support for these reciprocal connections between the semantic conceptual area and the phonological lexicon also came when a patient was discovered who had transcortical sensory aphasia. That is, these people had impaired speech comprehension, but intact repetition and production of speech. So, you can see that the model basically now comes from being called as the Wernicke-Lichtheim model to the Wernicke-Lichtheim-Kussmaul model, and you will see that there are these feedback connections from the semantic conceptual area to the phonological lexicon, while they have omitted the connection between the speech phonetic movement program area to the semantic conceptual area. We will see that this kind of led to a bit of a problem later. Now, basically to account for a different kind of deficit, there has to be this link was envisaged between the semantic conceptual representations and the speech output systems, as was there in the Wernicke-Lichtheim model. Now, if you have this link, because the absence of this link was leading to problems. Now, with the presence of this link, the model could now explain the profiles of transcortical motor aphasia, where patients could understand speech, but they would have difficulties in production. Retention of the link between this conceptual area, the conceptual representation and the speech phonetic motor planning would also be able to account for the patients who had difficulty in activating the semantic conceptual models of what they wanted to say. And this basically this very specific profile of aphasia was referred to as adynamic aphasia at some point. Now, you see also there was this another profile that this particular Kussmaul-Wernicke-Lichtheim model could not explain, was this aspect with deep dysphasics. Now, deep dysphasics basically are patients that can make speech production mistakes, but their speech production mistakes basically have a lot of phonetic errors. Also, deep dysphasic patients, when they make errors while repeating, but these errors are semantic in nature. These errors are basically, suppose for example, if you are talking about if you ask these people to repeat a word duck again and again, the conduction of physics might actually commit errors of the kind that they will produce duff instead of duck. But the deep dysphasics would actually produce a semantic relative of duck rather than duck itself. So, they would probably they would basically produce goose when you ask them to repeat duck. Also, when asked to repeat non-words, these deep dysphasic patients would produce real words that are phonetically similar to target real words. So, they have this impairment of repeating non-words. While the original Wernicke-Lichtheim model could actually explain these kind of profiles, as there was a connection between the semantic conceptual area and the speech movement program area, the Kussmaul-Wernicke-Lichtheim model basically could not do it as it was proposed. So, Heilmann in 2006 basically suggested that the Kussmaul-Wernicke-Lichtheim model needs to split the phonological output lexicon and the phonological input lexicon. So, if you remember, there is this module B here, which is the phonological lexicon. Heilmann in 2006 suggested that in order to be able to explain the profile of deep dysphasics and conduction of physics, they need to split this phonological lexicon into two parts, into the phonological input lexicon and the phonological output lexicon. Let us see how this model looks once this is there. So, this is how the model started looking now. So, you have the semantic conceptual area, the link between the semantic conceptual area and the speech phonetic area is also retained, and the phonological lexicon is now split into the phonological input lexicon and the phonological output lexicon. Now, the inclusion of these separate phonological input and output lexicon provided a way to discriminate between the profiles seen in the problems of people who had deep dysphasia. In conduction aphasia, people have so this is how the difference was made. In conduction aphasia, people would have a potential lesion of the line E, which connects the phonological output lexicon to the speech output center. You can see here I am talking about the line E, which is connecting phonological output lexicon to the speech phonetic movement programs, and this would basically lead to errors in speech production and having problems with repetition. When you talk about deep dysphasic patients, a lesion of the connections between the phonological input and output lexicons can be envisaged. So, you see there is this line C, which is connecting the phonological input and output lexicon. Now, damage to this line C basically would not really prevent repetition, as the input and output lexicons are connected via the semantic store, but it would lead to a different kind of a profile. As the semantic conceptual root is based on real words, non-word repetition will become difficult, as actually happens in deep dysphasics. Also, as the semantic conceptual system does not really have access to phonology, the frequent semantic errors will be made as in speech production, but because the words selected are constrained by semantics and not by phonetic representation. So, there will be less phonetic errors when repetition is asked for, but there will be more semantic errors when repetition is asked for. So, this is basically this was how these models were developed, and this was the most recent model given by Heilman, and this is basically one of the models which kind of explains most of the profiles of aphasia that can be observed. Now, I just wanted to give you a brief review into the different kinds of aphasias and their symptoms, also just a hint about what kind of lesions they might be arising out of. So, the first and the most important, Broca's aphasia. It is characterized by highly non-fluent speech with difficulties in repetition. Speech is characterized by typically long pauses between words and is very effortful, and often you will see that these patients will basically experience a motor speech problem, planning with planning of speech acts or dysarthria accompanying this. Patients also sometimes can experience muscle weakness in the right side of the body, because see, the left Broca's area is in the inferior frontal cortex, which is very adjacent to the motor area, and because the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, that is one of the reasons why sometimes Broca's aphasics could feel muscle weakness in the right part of the body or even paralysis of the right part of the body. The next profile is of Wernicke's aphasia. Wernicke's aphasia is a disorder of language comprehension. It is characterized by poor naming and repetition. Speech output, on the other hand, is fluent, and there could also be sometimes paraphasias when people are speaking in jumbled words, everything is getting mixed up in everything, and also neologisms, that they are forming new words which are not there previously. Also, some of these patients suffering from Wernicke's aphasia could show aspects of cortical blindness, things like hemianopia, when there is visual neglect of one side of the visual field. Wernicke's aphasia has been linked to the posterior superior temporal sulcus. Then there is conduction aphasia. Conduction aphasia is basically a problem with repetition with relatively preserved comprehension and spontaneous speech. Although the repetition might be fraught with phonemic errors, and also there is problem with confrontation naming. When you show them pictures and you ask them to name these pictures, then you will see that these patients will have certain problems. Then there is global aphasia. In global aphasia, all the major functions of language comprehension and production are affected, and it is basically coming as a result of extensive left hemisphere lesions involving both the Broca's and the Wernicke's areas. Then there is dysarthria. Dysarthria basically is an acquired disorder of speech production, and it basically refers to the difficulty in implementation of speech plans as they are applied to the movement of speech muscles. It is a very specific problem with moving the articulators, that is, I was talking about the vocal tract when we were talking about speech production. So, in dysarthria basically there is a problem between moving and manipulating these articulators, which leads to slurred or mumbled speech. We are talking about transcortical motor aphasia. Transcortical motor aphasia, patients basically can repeat properly, but comprehension and spontaneous speech production are compromised. The repetitions are often mandatory in this case, so patients display what is called echolalia, that they kind of keep repeating whatever is said to them or whatever they overhear. It has been linked to lesions with on the anterior and superior of Broca's area. Then there is transcortical sensory aphasia, which is basically linked to impaired comprehension, but the preservation of speech repetition and fluent output is there. This could be because of lesions to the medial inferior ventral temporal lobe and the anterior superior temporal gyrus. Then there is the mixed transcortical aphasia, or also referred to as the isolation aphasia. Comprehension and spontaneous speech are compromised, but repetition is preserved, and there is no voluntary language use in patients who are suffering from mixed transcortical aphasia. Mixed transcortical aphasia has been linked to lesions to the left motor and sensory cortices, and also lesions to the parietal lobe. Then you have the anomic aphasia. Anomic aphasia is linked to word finding difficulties, naming problems, and it often leads to vague and imprecise speech. This has been linked to damage to temporoparietal areas. Finally, we will talk about speech apraxia. Speech apraxia is basically again a disorder of the motor control of speech. People with speech apraxia have a great difficulty in saying what they want to say, because they cannot plan the speech and they cannot execute the speech. And this is one of the reasons they are very inconsistent in speech. A word may be correctly pronounced sometimes, but the next time they cannot really execute the movement associated with production of that kind of word. So, this is all from me on aphasias. I have not really gone into a lot of detail of it, but I have just tried to give you a flavor of problems associated with language production.